Welcome to the first inaugural CWU Industry Day. My name is Sathi Rajendran. I serve as a Dean of College of Education and Professional Studies. This Industry Day is hosted by the College of Business, and I'm filling in for Dean Faiza Koja, the College of Business Dean. She's at accreditation visit. So happy to be filling in. We are also fortunate from the College of Education and Professional Studies. We have aviation management partnering in this Industry Day. I'm delighted to have introduce the host of events. So we're going to start with the employer panel right now. We have a career fair happening right after this, and then we will have a networking lunch from 12:30 to 2:30 at a different venue, Sue Dining Room. So hope you can all join us. I want to start with thanking everybody who was instrumental in putting this event together behind the scenes, and also want to thank all the alumni who are coming back to this event, all the employers in the room next door here to recruit the students. So we really appreciate it. As a professional program in College of Business, we cannot do anything without industry engagement and your support. So thank you for that. I'm delighted to be the moderator for today's event, which promises to be an informative and engagement experience for all of us. As a student, I understand you're constantly seeking to expand your knowledge, learn from industry experts, and stay up to date with what's happening in the latest and greatest. As a former faculty member, I see myself as still a faculty member. I always tell my students, you're like walking around through your life cycle, career life cycle, whether you're coming from high school to college or going through college and graduating, starting a career, mid-career, advanced career, wherever you go, you always carry a metaphorical toolkit. You're always trying to fill that toolkit with tools that'll help you be successful. It's basically a fancier, simpler way to talk about lifelong learning. So you're here to get a lot of tools. So these four amazing individuals have been through that journey, and they have picked up a lot of tools during the journey. So you should also know what tools to use at the right time. So this experience will give you that, and with that, so I hope you can pick up a lot of tools today, and you need to make sure ask a lot of good questions so you can extract the tools out of these four individuals here. So with that, I'd like to request our panelists to take 5 minutes and introduce themselves by sharing their background. Please share with us about your journey after graduation and how you entered the workforce and successfully navigated the initial years. Additionally, what motivated you to pursue this particular industry? Start with.
I'm Jordan Kehus. I work for Alliant Private Client or Alliant Insurance Services. We're a national brokerage for insurance, commercial, employee benefits. My department is private client and personal risk. So what that means is I'm generally working with high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals and families, offering risk management advice, writing insurance coverage, and I've grown from my career at the very beginning. We started at a State Farm agency, and I guess to answer the first part of it, came from Central, found Red Robin, worked there for a good amount of time. Wasn't really sure what my skills in the workforce would be. I knew I loved working with people, enjoyed, connecting. And I think that the natural kind of inclination was to go towards sales of some sort. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was find an industry and a product that's always going to be needed with, and we saw that with COVID, what can be time tested and economically tested, and financial services was what I fell upon. So moving from the State Farm office up to the high net worth individuals, working family office, ultra high net worth, the complexities are very broad, very niche market. I think that the progression through that was kind of learning my strengths, which is not sitting and memorizing 200 pages of insurance contract language. It's connecting other people and knowing when to connect those dots with people too. Thank you for having me too.
All right, Chafeka Abdellatif. I'm a Palestinian American. I grew up both in the Yakima Valley and in the Middle East. I graduated from Central a long time ago. Right after graduation, I really thought I was just going to wait a little bit and go to law school. So I got a job at a law firm as a paralegal, and I ended up doing that for almost a decade. I decided halfway through with the recession and everything, I just didn't really want to go to law school. And shortly after about to hit my 10th year, I was looking around the Yakima Valley, had a lot of friends that worked in ag. And I, at that time, decided, you know what, there's a lot of niches within ag that are heavily reliant upon processes that you learn in law, whether it's HR or foreign labor supply through the H-2A program or food safety compliance programs that are heavily audited. And I just kind of slowly transitioned into ag and went fully into it at about like 2014. I currently work at Domex, Superfresh Growers. We're a vertically integrated agricultural company. We grow, pack, and sell tree fruit and blueberries around the world. We work with growers all over the Northwest and also in some other parts of the world as well, as we're getting more and more into the blueberry market. It's really fun and rewarding. I can work with executives from Walmart or Costco one day on a project that we're doing when it comes to labor, or I can be down, recruiting workers in foreign countries to supply our needs when it comes to the H-2A labor. And also with this work, I've gotten heavily involved in regulation and policy, working with networks like the National Council of Ag Employers, serving on the board for the Washington Growers League. And it's been very fun and rewarding. And, yeah.
Amy?
Hi, my name is Amy Pavel. I'm a senior optimization consultant with Southwest Airlines, specifically within their Tech Ops network. So I often say that I did not choose aviation, aviation chose me. So when I graduated from Ohio Valley University, I thought I was on top of the world. I was graduating with 3 Bachelor of Sciences in biology, biochemistry, and math. And I had right before graduation decided that I actually didn't want to go to medical school like I was planning to do the whole time. So left, went to, decided to move to Pittsburgh and thought that, surely I can find something, medically related to do here. Turns out I was qualified to babysit lab rats on the midnight shift. So had a very shocking moment of realization that I was a very little fish in a very big pond. But thankfully, I had a family friend who was a manager of line maintenance with American Airlines. It used to be US Airways up in that region and then transferred to American with the merger. So went and started working with aircraft records and started to, really just gain all of those soft skills that you first get when you're in your first, big job. And all of a sudden, thought things were going great. And all of a sudden, American comes up and goes, hey guys, so in the next couple of years, we're actually going to close this hangar. I went, great. Now what do I do? So I had always loved teaching and decided to go back and get my master's in education so I could go teach math. And the whole time, my manager was saying, hey, there's opportunities if you want to stay on with American at Dallas. And I was like, I grew up in the Midwest. I like it out here. I don't really think I want to go to Dallas. I don't have anybody down there. This comes up later, I promise. So went back home, ended up teaching high school high school math at my alma mater. It's very interesting teaching with all your old teachers. It is definitely a moment of if I knew then what I know now. And then had the opportunity to move to Dallas of all places. And at that point, I had been through a few more Midwest winters and went, I am all for no more snow. Yes, sign me up. How do I get there as fast as I can? Went and taught for a little bit longer down in Texas and then decided, you know what, maybe education's not what I wanted. And so kind of did some soul searching for a little bit and realized that there was an opportunity at Southwest Airlines. And so went ahead and went back into aircraft records at Southwest instead. So kind of full circled that one. And I started out with them. They were in the process of transferring the computer system where they keep all of their aircraft maintenance records, which sounds very simple, but I promise you it's way more complex. And so I helped organize the team that would develop all of those processes for what it would look like in a future state. And since then, I have kind of navigated the waters and found what makes me happy in the workplace. And that is how I have become a consultant for our tech ops industry. So for those of you not so familiar with aviation, we have our pilots, we have our wonderful flight attendants, and then you have the people who actually work on the aircraft and support all of those individuals who work on the aircraft. And that little niche itself is called tech ops. So that is my world. I get to be around airplanes every day and work around mechanics, and it's absolutely wonderful. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you. Jenn?
All right. My name is Jenn Schwope. I am an HR leader at Microsoft. I came to Central thinking that I was going to major in vocal performance. I got about 3/4 of the way through that degree and then started doing the math on like what kind of jobs you could get with a vocal performance degree and how much student loan debt I would have. And so I switched to business. I fell into Central's HR program just by virtue of being a nerdy person who joins clubs. We had a really strong chapter of SHRM, which I didn't know even what that stood for at the time, but I did end up majoring in HR. And then, you know, I hopped around a little bit, graduated into sort of the .bomb era. And so I first got a job at the Yakima treetop plant. But my fiance at the time, my husband now, had a job at Boeing actually. And Boeing was doing massive layoffs. So we were both looking for jobs on other sides of the mountains to try to get to the same place where the other one was. I found one on the west side first. And he actually ended up surviving at Boeing. He had been at Boeing from when we graduated until about 6 months ago. And from there, I worked at a biotech firm, did some consulting, and then I got into tech and sort of started finding my stride and sort of my niche. I started out in an electronics manufacturing company that was very small, but we had international offices, and that sort of became my niche, right? So I was working and leading HR for a smaller company that had a presence in probably 3 or 4 countries. In my next opportunity, one of the reasons they were interested in my background is because I had worked with multiple countries. They probably had, the next employer had locations in probably 5 or 6 countries, and then we acquired companies to where we got up to about 15. My next role after that was for a larger consulting firm who was like, you know, you've done 15 countries, how does 25 sound? So the more that you kind of fall into that niche and the more knowledge you get in that area, the more you're recruited or, you know, wanted for those particular skills. In most companies, you know, HR support is going to be organized by geography. So you're not going to be supporting people. It's actually pretty unusual to be supporting people directly that are in other countries, as hands-on as I've been in my career. But again, it was a niche I fell into. And the role that I am at today opened up, and they had probably about 600 people in I think 53 countries at the time. And so again, they were like, if you could do 25, you could probably do 50. And so that's where I'm at now. I've worked in tech for large and small employers. Again, the smallest being probably about 150 people, leading the whole kit and caboodle for HR, being the vice president of HR for, you know, a more mid-sized company of 500 to 1,000 people, and then leading HR strategy for an engineering group at Microsoft. But we are the only engineering group that lives in sort of the sales side of the business. And so that's one of the reasons why we have people all over the world, and we work directly doing engineering projects with our customers and helping teach them engineering fundamentals when it comes to software engineering, because we are a software engineering company, but like, you know, Coca-Cola or Walmart, or, you know, they're in whatever industry they're in, they have engineers as well, but our engineers can help their engineers, you know, get stronger at engineering practices and whatnot. And like I said, my role today focuses on the HR strategy for our team. I mean, I think that's it. I'm excited to be here today, as well as everybody else. I am a big Wildcat supporter, and feel like, you know, I learned a lot from my time here at Central, and it really helped me navigate my career here.
So, thank you. That's amazing. One thing, as you could tell, they didn't exactly plan where they are at right now. It's kind of, so you need to be ready for that adaptive change as things come your way. How we're going to do this is we have 2 microphones on either end here. If you have a question, if you could come up to the front and ask your question, and so we can record it and so forth. So I have one question, then I will turn it over to you after that. So if you could come and ask. We are way ahead of schedule, so we have a lot of time with the panelists today. So one thing about leadership. So you've all heard about the term leadership. You probably have taken classes on leadership. Leadership's all about respect and influence, right? It's not a title. It's not who you are and so forth. Everyone can be leader in different aspects of it. With that, can you share your leadership philosophy and how you lead with the students?
Yeah, so our founder at Southwest Airlines, Herb Kelleher, has a quote that we say a lot in our business, and I absolutely love it. If you don't treat your own people well, they won't treat other people well. So it's kind of like the golden rule or the platinum rule. I know that that's kind of the more popular term these days. So with, you know, like you said, you don't need a title to be a leader. And I think that that's one of the common misconceptions for folks coming straight out of college, right? They think, oh, I can't be a leader. You know, I'm not a VP or I'm not a manager, but that's not true at all, actually. There's a type of leadership called indirect leadership, and it's where you're able to use your influence in order to help guide and support others. So, you know, just because you might be, you know, new to the business or new to a job, it doesn't mean that you can't help lead initiatives. If you have ideas, if you have advice, speak up. You know, allow others to come to you and help push other people to, towards being better and improving items. So that's one of the leadership qualities that we see a lot within Southwest, and I think it's one of the things that makes Southwest unique, and one of the things that I would encourage you to go ahead and try to cultivate as well.
You know, you stole some of my thunder there on some of the exact things that I was going to say. At Microsoft, we also have a philosophy that, you know, you don't need to have a specific job title or level to be a leader. And we have what we call leadership principles. And our leadership principles are create clarity, generate energy, and deliver success. And then I was also going to speak to, you know, your ability to influence others is a big part of, you know, how you're going to make an impact wherever you go out into the world. Even you have to be able to influence without authority, I think is usually like the term that people like to use. And then I would say personally for me, my leadership style also starts with empathy and collaboration. If you start with those things, you can bring people along in just about anything. And it's a good way to be able to influence people, again, by having empathy for people and collaborating with them.
Building on that as well, the leadership and speaking up, that's something that we talk about a lot, not needing the title to speak up. Some of the big philosophies are fostering a culture of trust and collaboration. And so by us doing that, myself and others in leadership or executive level management, it's important that we share that with everyone and we tell that to everyone. And so speaking up is a huge way. We know who's providing some new ideas and keeping us fresh on our toes. And I think sometimes we get our best ideas and our best direction from some people who just speak up. And so I'm glad that you both said that. And yeah, fostering a culture of collaboration is very important. It's one of the leadership skills that we hone in on at Superfresh Growers.
You hit on what I was going to say, culture. That's such a huge component of the buy-in from your employees or your team or your group. I think you look at the most successful companies or organizations now, they cared about people during the pandemic. I think they let that trickle down to the smallest level of employee to the largest, and those are the ones you see people wanting to work at. You hear great things about them, but I have a 9-year-old son. I coach his baseball team, his basketball team. It's and when I came here to Central, I was in the physical education school health program for the majority of my time here. So I mean, whether I'm with high school class and middle school class, or my son's 9-year-old team, or my team at work, I think an environment where people feel safe, they feel like you care about them, where you're communicative, that is, I think, what people start to follow you as a leader rather than just the job title, like you mentioned too.
Yeah, to build on that, I would say I've been at Microsoft for 6 years now, and I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid. And 6 years is the longest I've spent with any employer over my work history. And one of the reasons why I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, is because of the incredible care that I've seen that company demonstrate for its employees. And the pandemic was a great example of all the way from the company's policies and philosophies and benefits that they added and how quickly they responded to the pandemic, all the way down to your individual manager or coworkers expressing care for what was going on in your life and what was difficult about the pandemic situation for you personally. At every level of the company, I just saw through the infrastructure and all the individuals how people cared for you, and it was just, it was pretty dramatically different from any place else I've ever worked in my career. Not that every other place didn't care, but just to the level, like I said, how they put it through every level of the infrastructure in the company really made a big difference. So.
Awesome, thank you. Let's take some questions from the audience. So if anyone has a question, please come up to the microphone and ask a question. Great.
My name is Hayden. I have a question for the alumni from Central. Would you say that Central has prepared you, even though this isn't the career that you were looking for? I'm talking more in terms of soft skills. Would you say that Central has prepared you properly for the career that you're pursuing right now?
Thank you.
I would say definitely. Although I maybe in the time didn't know it, but all of the relationships that I built, I had a lot of great relationships with some of my professors at the time, and I even carried them on up until some of them have left being faculty here. But just having, I feel like this is, although it's very large, it's still smaller than some of the universities that all of my friends went to. And I feel like the relationships that I fostered with professors and students kind of started my first networks. They're the ones that provided me more information on whether, law school would really be worth it at that time of graduation in the middle of a recession. They were a soundboard for some direction. They were references for some of my very first jobs. And so I feel that it was definitely a very fostering environment to become employed right after. But it was also something that I was putting into it as well, because I know I have a lot of, like I said, friends that went to college, and I don't think that they necessarily had that. And maybe there's some students who are a little shy to maybe build or foster those relationships, but I think it is important, and I think it can give you the edge once you graduate and are job seeking.
I'm also a big believer in you get out of it what you put into it. And so, you're a professor, you can choose how involved you want to get in things. And the more involved you get, the more you will get out of it. That does mean being busier and more work. And, seeing humans in person more often, right? Like as we're all sort of adjusting to a post-pandemic world and things being done remotely more often. But I can't underscore the importance of networking enough. I know you guys probably hear that all the time. I have heard it all the time when I was in school. And I graduated out into the world and I was like, how do you even do that? You know, once you start finding your niche, like get involved in professional associations, and don't just get involved in them, but like volunteer for them, like volunteer for leadership, things like that. That was one of the ways that I built up my network when, you know, I was a 26-year-old who was leading HR for a global company. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing, even though I was the most senior HR person at that company. And so I had to build up my network to make sure that I was qualified to do my job, right? And so I got involved in groups, I volunteered. And it was hard too, because I had young kids at the time and all the other people volunteering were like 20 years older than me. But the investment that I made in my network during those times and volunteering and all those things, you build up that network and then you have the network forever, right? So you can get to a point where you're like, okay, like I have too much going on in my life. I'm not going to volunteer all my time doing this stuff anymore. But at that point, you've built up your network. And a lot of the roles that I've gotten into have come to me through connections I've made through that network. And, you know, maybe weren't the direction I thought I was going to go. But again, you know, being open to opportunities that come your way is always a good thing to do, and investing in that network. And I think you'll get that advice here at Central, and you've got to choose to engage.
Thank you very much. Actually, if no one else has a second question, I have a super hyper specific question for you, Chafeka. Yeah, I'm in the economics club, and I was talking to we had the economist for the Washington Tree Fruit Association come and have a talk. He talked about how for recruiting specifically for agriculture, since like Mexico is like having an industrial like freaking boom right now, it's kind of harder to recruit from Mexico. Are you looking like are you going into different countries for that?
So us specifically, we have not yet, but it's definitely in conversations. And I think the government as a whole, especially this current particular administration, is having like a hyper focus on triangle countries. So El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala. And there's a couple reasons why they're doing that, but and so there are some companies that have already been recruiting from those countries as well. I mean, if you look at demographics of the countries as well, you have to see that Guatemala has the youngest population, and they're not as aging as some of the areas. So we definitely look at all that. We work very closely with the Tree Fruit Association and other organizations, but we have not yet. But it's always a conversation. And it's definitely something that we'll have to look at when we look at the future of ag. And so when we talk about that specifically, you're talking about Washington State specifically when it comes to the tree fruit organizations and the labor there. We have a question about kind of the future of ag, and automation is one of them, and that can only work for so many crops. But with our tree fruit, it's very labor intensive, and there's yet to be any real prolific automation that's going to work yet. And so that's definitely why we're going to have to continue to look at those labor options to deal with the shortages that we have.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I was going to answer another part of your question, Hayden, about the how the experience set you up for life after school. And to the point about networking, I 100% agree with that, where a lot of my friends that left WSU or Washington State, or I'm sorry, Washington, they had a Greek system. They had a network built in that was just already set up for them to be successful outside of school, to have networking groups, to have alumni that trickled down to those guys. I think like your guys' work should start right now. Like start getting to know people that you're going to be talking to in the next 5 or 6 years. I think it's super important. I wish I would have known that then, because you're a salesperson right now, whether you want to be or not, and you're going to be selling your services, your personality, your abilities to your employers, your coworkers. And I think you start selling right now, you get to people to know you, you network now. because every one of the people that compete with you guys are going to be on LinkedIn, hunting for jobs and fighting, scratching and clawing. And the more people you know that want to help you out and that care about you as a person, they're going to hook you up with a job, right? They're going to want to do well for you. So start your work now for sure.
And in addition, like getting involved in associations being a good way to get to know people. I mean, use the people you already know in your life today, like your parents, friends. Like if you're interested in a career with a background of, you know, that relates to someone that you know, just set up like an informational time with them. I know it feels really awkward to like schedule time with someone that you don't know and just have a conversation with them, but it is valuable and it does make you stick out in their minds and think of you as they hear of things in the future and things like that. So it can feel awkward, but you know, utilize the network you've already got, utilize your professors, and just get over the awkwardness. And because I also remember being told about like networking so much, but going like, what does that mean? Like, what do I do to make that happen? How do I get to know people? So.
Awesome. Can take a question from there and then we can go this side. So go for it.
And this is actually appropriate from your last comments, but my question is, what advice do you have students who freshly graduate but do not have that firsthand experience, but everything they apply to requires experience? How are they going to get their foot in the door?
I always tell people to focus on their transferable skills and make sure, I mean, and you can get transferable skills from anything, fast food, customer service. It's really important that whatever job you had, you pull from it something that could tie to the next one. And there usually is some skill set. I mean, I went from legal to ag, like what in just looking at that, you would be like, doesn't tie, but then when you start getting into the nitty gritty of being able to look at decipher legalese and policies and all of that, it just worked really well. And so I had to sell myself on that. I had to go get some like certifications and some, you know, random food safety accreditations and stuff like that to sell myself further. But just really trying to find and pick these transferable skills, I think is one of the best tools that you can do. And it really makes you kind of analyze what you've done and what you can offer.
And customize your resume. So as you're building your resume, you know, building on what she said, you want to prioritize in your resume what you want them to know about you. And so you think about those transferable skills and what skills you have or what you've done that's most applicable to the roles that you're applying to, and feature that prominently. And again, it's a pain and it is an investment to make a different resume for each job that you're applying to, but it makes a difference.
Excuse me, I'm going to kind of take a different approach because I absolutely agree with everything that, you know, both of these ladies have said. But my advice is kind of twofold, but it all centers under being humble, right? You're going to leave here and you are going to feel like you are on top of the world and you are invincible, and to a degree, you will be. However, you're never going to know everything. So my first advice is always to the networking concept. Find a mentor, right? When you get into your first job, find somebody who has been there, who has learned. You don't have to make all the mistakes of the people who came before you, right? Set yourself up for success. Have those coffees, you know, and just ask, you know, hey, I'm in this situation and I don't know what I should do. What should I do? And listen, find a couple different mentors. My biggest piece on a mentor, though, is find somebody who's going to care about your success, not just somebody with a flashy title, right? And with that, you know, again, always be hungry to learn because you're not going to know everything. One of my favorite examples is during our commencement ceremony. I remember our university president talking about some individuals who had graduated like 5 or 7 years before me and had come back and was doing a lunch with him. And they were talking about how, you know, they went out and it was their first job. It was a friend group who got hired together. And, you know, one of their first assignments was to go print off like 500 copies of something and collate it. And they're like, but we're not interns. What do you mean go print off 500 copies of this pamphlet? Okay. And they went and they stood in front of this printer and went, how do you work this thing? And I sat there thinking, how do you not know how to work a copier? And 6 months later, I am standing at the copier in front of for American Airlines going, oh, this is how you don't know how to work this thing. It may be some of, those highly technical skills of, I don't know how to, format this document exactly how my boss wants it. Or it could be, I just don't know how to work the copier today. But whatever it is, there's always going to be somebody out there to help you. So just remember, stay humble and always stay willing to learn.
Thank you.
I think it's also knowing what a lot of self-reflection, know what your strengths are and your weaknesses. And I know that's like a job interview question, but it's so true because if you can play at your strengths, and to your point, if you have people to help you, and I agree 100%, I think whether you respect them or not, someone can be a mentor. Out of BS, you're going to pull a nugget of information out of something, right? I see my kids' eyes glaze over all the time when I'm talking to them, but every now and then I see their eyes light up and they understood something that was valid, right? And I think that's how people are too. And you hear things, you learn from people, but you use your strengths, and you're not going to be the best at every single thing out there. But I think that at the end of the day, if you can use those strengths to be ingenuitive, to be different, and then to find people who have similar strengths and then are really strong in places where you're weak, you pick those nuggets of information out and you're well-rounded at that point, right? You make yourself well-rounded.
Thank you. Hi. So I personally find network a little bit intimidating, and as somebody with a very busy schedule, I have a job and I'm doing class and I have other responsibilities. It feels like a lot of things can feel like a waste of time. Do you have methods or areas that you recommend people focus on networking? I've done like informational interviews and stuff like that with people on LinkedIn, but it's difficult to know where to spend my time.
I think the word networking can be looked at as so cliche, like I gotta go have coffee, or I gotta go to a happy hour, or I have to go to some event where I sit around and talk and shake hands, and then it's awkward and I want to just be away from there. I think anyone who is busy also still has to have some enjoyment in their life. Find the things you like, find people who like that too. And you don't have to call it networking, you're making new friends. And that's one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard. Trying to be introduced to somebody else and or introduce him, and he said, I'm always down to make a new friend. And he looked at it like I'm making a group of people that care about me, because that's what networking is, right? You look at a center of influence, someone who's going to talk well behind your back about you and promote you. You make friends doing whatever it is that you enjoy, and it's not going to be awkward. It's not going to be weird. You're going to find cool people. You're going to find some weirdos too that you don't want to be around. But for me, my colleagues went to art events. They went to yacht clubs. They went to charity dinners. And I wanted to yank my head out and quit what I was doing for the rest of my life. I found golf, and lo and behold, I can have fun. I can play well enough where people don't want to quit after a couple holes with me, but it's easy networking and I'm making friends, and they introduce you to more friends that you meet, right? So think about what you enjoy doing, and it's natural. It's innate to you. So
Take one more.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that you just said. I think that networking is kind of an intimidating term sometimes. I prefer to think of it as using it as an opportunity to just connect, right? Jenn highlighted on using your empathy skills, and sometimes it's just that, right? Find a common place and let the conversation take off from there. I've had tons of conversation over the years with individuals in the different industries that I've been a part of, and we started talking about a sports team, and it has led to talking about our career paths and different opportunities. And that's kind of how I ended up in my job that I'm in today. It's just by having some of those hallway conversations with individuals. Never be afraid to stop and just say good morning, because that can sometimes lead to a conversation. So as somebody who was also very intimidated by the concept of networking when she first started, I understand that entirely. So just look at it as, again, just conversation starters, and just see where it takes you.
Ask a question. Thank you so much.
So you guys talked about the importance of networking and, making those connections. Do you guys have any advice on maintaining those connections? Because I've already had some.
Absolutely. One of the things that I would recommend is don't try to make it too much of a burden on yourself, right? Because then it becomes a to-do and it's no longer fun. And if it's not fun, you're not going to keep up with it, right? So with the individuals that I still have as mentors, I go ahead and I book, like as soon as we end up having lunch, I say, hey, would love to do this again. What's going to be another good time for you to do this? And they'll tell me, oh, and I'm 13 for now. Great. And just go put it on your calendar, right? We live on our cell phones. You guys will soon live and die by Outlook. And so if you just put it on your calendar and then make sure that it remains a priority for you, right? If somebody tries to block over your time, it's okay to say, I have a conflict, right? And as long as you continue to put that importance and priority, behind it, it'll stay in, you'll be able to maintain those friendships and those mentors capabilities.
That's one of the reasons why I talked about professional associations as well, is because you get involved in there and you have a purpose that you're working on with other people. And so the maintenance of those relationships isn't required because you're in contact with them on the regular, working on things. And then the other thing that is a plus about that is, you can be learning things. You can approach things with a sense of curiosity, which is something that people want to see out there. And so, and you're also in sort of like an association that's focused on the niche area that you're interested in. And I think that helps as well to build up your network in that area. So if you can find some sort of professional association to get involved in, that is related to the path that you're on, and again, volunteering helps you build those relationships and maintain them over time because, you're in the trenches with people getting stuff done.
One thing to add for that, like professional networking websites like LinkedIn, it's a very good, I was listening to Coach K, the famous Duke basketball team coach. It's always, he's been in touch with all his former players. So whenever he sees a posting on LinkedIn, just acknowledging it, saying, hey, good job, even that little thing makes a huge difference. So you don't have to have a lunch or dinner or those kind of things, just having a hi, liking message. That's what I would encourage everybody to be in LinkedIn, so you kind of stay in constant, so you know what's going on in their life. If something serious they share on LinkedIn, you can make a phone call and say, I'm here for you, what can I do to help, those kind of things too. So with that, Dr. Raj, you have a question?
Hi, I'm Raj. I'm a faculty in the aviation department. One of the topics I teach is the organizational design and structure. And I use a case study on Southwest Airlines. So I have a question for you specifically. The answer I will share with my students probably in the next round when I teach that. The question is basically during the pandemic time, so how did the airline handle the workforce? Especially when you speak high about the people culture. So what percentage of people lost employment and after the pandemic? So now what's the current status? What percentage of those people are rehired, reemployed, or is there anything? If you could highlight, that'll be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am pleased to say that Southwest let go of 0 employees throughout the entire pandemic. We had to act quickly, right? We are known as the Love Airline. We are very people-centric, very people-focused. And so when we had to go home, there was still part of our workforce that couldn't go home, right? My job, I was fortunate enough to be able to, plug in, call in on, my laptop from my couch, but it's kind of hard to fix an airplane from your house, right? There had to be certain conditions met so that way we could still fly individuals from point A to point B for the flights that were still necessary, to keep everybody moving and to keep other operations functional. And so the airline did a fantastic job of consulting, with the health professionals and finding ways to maintain safe business practices for those of us who weren't able to go home and needed to stay in the office to support. But then also, we're very fortunate enough to have a culture and engagement department within headquarters itself. And so they immediately jumped in and said, how do we keep the Southwest culture alive, right? How do we keep folks engaged? And so finding ways to continue to network, just even within the company, as we were all home and not being able to do anything. So, happy hours became a thing on Microsoft Teams, or just even just connecting via newsletters, saying, hey, this is what's going on with so-and-so, and hey, this is, where we're going with this. And so coming back into the office and coming out of the pandemic, it's been very unique, being able to see the different work styles. Again, within tech ops, we touch an aircraft, we're going to be in the office. But we are still adapting and modernizing what that Southwest culture looks like, from a behind the scenes perspective, with our business folks, our finance individuals, et cetera, the folks who don't have to be face to face. So we are continuing to evolve every day.
The second part of the question was, what percentage of the pilots or the other employees been rehired? Do you have anything of that nature?
So we didn't have to rehire anyone because we didn't actually end up laying anyone off. I know that there were some concerns about potentially having to furlough individuals, but we didn't even have to go down that path. So yeah, we were very, very fortunate.
Thank you. So we have, I think, 3 questions here. So we have 15 minutes. So if we can have one panelist answer each of the questions, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Grant. I'm an aviation management student, and my question is specifically for Amy. In your introduction, you talked about how you went from American, decided to get your master's, and then go into teaching math for a little bit before transitioning back into the industry at Southwest in similar roles, from what I understand. I am wondering, what did you learn in the process of attaining your master's degree and then working as a math teacher that may have helped you as you retransitioned back into working in the aviation industry?
Fantastic question. So as a consultant, we advise, we support, we guide, and there's a little bit of project management work involved. And if any of you have ever been involved in project management, you know the term herding cats. Guess what classroom management is? So one of the things that a lot of people come and ask me is, to your point, how do you still use your master's? Like, do you feel like you wasted 2 years of your life getting that? And my answer is absolutely not. So many of those skills were transferable into, the work that I do today, whether that's, helping to mediate some conflict that's going on between different stakeholder departments on the project that we're working, or whether it's being able to communicate clearly, the process that we're trying to implement, or, why we need to improve upon something. All of that is incredibly applicable moving forward in the consultant world. So yeah, push on those soft skills.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. One up.
This is a question for any of you, really, because I feel you all said a philosophy of leadership is like being friends and share empathy with your people and stuff like that. Do you think it's good to have a healthy dose of like authorities over people, and like where do you draw the line, or it's best to just be friends all in all?
Definitely experienced crossing that line of, you have to have professionalism in the workplace. And I think once it becomes other than that, I think the line is hard to see and to go back again. I think if you're the leader and you're the person in charge of that team, yeah, we just approach that with the thought, my first and foremost goal is to be here for my team, but it's in a professional way, right? And I think joking, laughing, inviting them over to your house for dinner, you keep that same kind of coach mentality, and you don't cross the line to say, these are my best friends, right? I think it's easy to do after years of getting to know people, having great times with them. But I think it's a dangerous line to cross once you go too far, because it's not coming back the other way.
I would say the other thing, and I got to put my HR hat on here. The other thing is, I would say many HR issues that I've seen in my career are because two people became friends at work, or maybe one person saw themselves as the other person's friend and the other person didn't see that, and they have different boundaries or ideas of what's appropriate or ideas of what's okay, right? And so one person is a hugger and the other person is not a hugger. This is sort of a benign example, but like, you know, the person who is a hugger assumes that everyone else is also a hugger, and the person who's not a hugger assumes that everyone knows it's completely inappropriate to hug your coworker, right? And so, you know, neither one of them sees or thinks that anything wrong is happening, but then everybody's upset, right? And so I would also say, like, you know, keeping some of those professional boundaries, like he was saying, is important. And just keeping in mind that, like, not everyone thinks like you think, right? And whatever, you know, the boundary is, it's up to the individual. And so, you know, that there's as many different like boundaries and ideas of what's appropriate as there are people in the world. And so, you know, keep that in mind, right? You have to get a sense for people. I'm not saying that, you know, friendships in the workplace are a no-go, but yeah, you definitely have to keep some of those professional lines in place. It'll serve you well.
Thank you. Next questions? We can start with Chafeka.
Hello, I'm Macy. I'm a business admin student. My question is, do you have any specific qualifications, like i.e. certifications, et cetera, that you look for in the next generation of the workforce?
We fill roles for so many different positions. I mean, it could be farm labor all the way to like a director of business development or marketing. And so I would say there's never a certain task or things that we want to see on a resume. I mean, but I do, what you mentioned earlier, tailor your resume. You can definitely tell when someone doesn't. And so, so I would just, no, I can't link to certain tasks that you could put on there, but maybe you have some insight. I just feel like I fill different roles in so many different realms of the company.
Yeah, it also very much depends on, again, what niche and what kind of focus you're going to go into. You know, HR, as an example, has several different certifications that you can get into, but also the thinking on those has evolved, right? When I graduated, like, it was the thing to do to go get those certifications, and like you had to do it. Now a lot of HR professionals look at those and go, are these professional associations just sort of trying to do like a money grab, right? Where, you know, you have to pay to take this big, long, hard test, and then you have to pay every so many years to show that you're keeping up your certification. I would say, you know, experience is first and foremost. If you have the opportunity to get internships and experience, or even if not an internship, like we talked about earlier, applying whatever skills in other roles that you've worked to the jobs that you're going after, that's going to be the most important things. But again, it depends. Because sometimes, say you're looking for a career change, right, which can be difficult to navigate. Say you've worked in one particular field for a while and you want to switch. Well, maybe going and getting an HR certification, if that's the new direction you want to go, is something that you can do to demonstrate on your resume that that's the direction you're turning to help you get a foot in the door. So I think it depends, but again, you know, you want to make sure that whatever certification you're getting or whatever additional skills and education you're requiring are sort of pointed in the direction that you want to go.
I would also say too that certifications are obviously lengthening your experience on paper, right? But when someone like a recruiter or even an employer is looking through the stacks of resume, you're a name on a piece of paper, and you're competing against 100 to 300 to 500 other people. And that is why the networking component is so important, because you leave here with 300 people that you've met over your 4 years, and that's not even including friends and family, other people outside of your school network. The in-person interview is the most important job, because an employer will give someone coachable and likable and part of their culture that they see a fit, the opportunity to earn that achievement or the certification once they're on their team. So that can happen, right? I think the biggest and most important part is get the interview and get in person with that person, but it's about who you know 90% of the time. So.
And that's so true. I was just going to add like a stat that I just heard at Microsoft last week is so far this fiscal year. So we're about 9 months into our fiscal year. We've had 1 million job applications at Microsoft, 1 million. Yeah, again, the networking, like even to try to refer someone internally can be a challenge at a company as large as Microsoft. And it still takes, networking, not the referral tool. So.
We have one last question. We have a couple more minutes left.
Just real quick, one topic or tool we haven't really talked about. Can you speak to resiliency? Because life, will hit these kids at some point, and how do they push forward?
I think it goes back to, and this is like the epiphany I had with sales. It's like dating, right? You strike out 1 million times, but you don't stop, right? You don't change your preference. You don't give up. You just go back and you're resilient. You have grit. I think you look at the majority of things in life as something as important to, that. And I think, and again, I think every person in this room, all of us are salespeople in one way or another. And I think you have to have that mentality. You have to find that grit somehow. And, it's going to be something that you keep with you forever. The job search is just a component of part of that, right?
I think that one of the things that we've been focusing on is your network from a career standpoint. But I think that another really important thing as you start out is finding a network from your personal standpoint as well, right? Whether that's family, your close group of friends, you are going to hit a wall at some point in your career. Having somebody to fall back on, having that safety net is pivotal, right? Somebody's always going to be able to be there and be your sounding board and listen to you. And sometimes, it's not always the greatest thing for that to be somebody, at work and your mentor and such like that. But starting to, build up that base now is going to help you for when you do have those really hard days, because they will happen.
Let's take her. Jenn or Schwope. Okay, awesome. Thank you. We had a lot of fill-up questions, but we didn't have to use any of those questions. So you guys were a great audience. So thanks for all the great questions. We really appreciate all 4 of you for taking the time. And as